All right. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are, and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. Um, I'm Connor Freely. I'm the Director of External Engagement here at CareerWise, and I'm very excited to have you guys join us for today's conversation on starting and scaling youth apprenticeship programs in the skilled trades. Across the CareerWise network and beyond, we're seeing a growing momentum around connecting young people to construction, manufacturing, and other high-demand trades. Fields that offer not just strong wages, but real pathways to long-term family-sustaining careers. But as many of you know, the opportunity doesn't come without challenges. And when we talk to intermediaries and employers, we hear some familiar concerns. Number one is that employers are wondering about liability, safety, and productivity, and whether young people are really ready for a job site. Partners are looking for clearer ways to demonstrate return on investment, not just in dollars, but in workforce development, culture, and retention, and the ongoing challenge of how to communicate the value of apprenticeship in a way that builds confidence and broadens participation. Today's session is designed to tackle those challenges head on. We'll hear directly from leaders who have moved employers from maybe to yes, who built pathways that truly work for both young people and industry, and who are shaping systems that make apprenticeship a sustainable part of the skilled trades talent pipeline. We brought together a diverse and dynamic panel to help us explore these issues from every angle today. First, we'll hear from Andrew, the founder, president, and CEO of Building Futures, an intermediary and advocate who's built his organization from the ground up to connect underserved communities with careers instruction. Andrew will share what he's learned about engaging hesitant employers, addressing misconceptions about youth readiness, and making the ROI return investment case for apprenticeship in ways that resonate. Then we'll turn to Marina, a national policy and systems leader and the executive director of Building Futures. Sorry, Trade Futures. We just talked about Trade Building Futures, who's worked across the federal, state, and nonprofit landscape. Marina will help us zoom out to the bigger picture, what it takes to shift employer mindsets at scale, how messaging can strengthen both equity and participation, and how apprenticeship helps unions and employers connect with future talent. Together, this group represents the full ecosystem it takes to make apprenticeship work, from policy to practice, from employers to apprentices. Throughout the session, we'll explore some main practical questions. How do we overcome employer skepticism and misconceptions? How do we clearly show the financial and workforce return on investment of apprenticeship? And how do we tell the story of apprenticeship in a way that both inspires and sustains employer engagement? By the end of today's discussion, we hope you'll leave with concrete strategies, messaging tools, and examples you can apply in your own communities so that together we can continue expanding access to high quality apprenticeship experiences for more young people across the skilled trades. So, thank you all for being here and thank you for your leadership making this work possible. With that, let's dive in. Andrew, I'd love to start with you. Could you tell us a little bit about Building Futures and what you've learned about moving employers from maybe to yes, and also a little bit about yourself and how your work brought you here?
Yeah, sure. It's a pleasure to be with you, Connor. Thanks for the invitation. Building Futures really, I built a program that I could have used as a young adult myself. So, in large part, I'll make a distinction right off the bat between apprenticeship readiness, pre-apprenticeship, and registered apprenticeship. And Building Futures launched in 2007 with two core programs that we still run today. One is a very comprehensive pre-apprenticeship program, which prepares people who are experiencing poverty for success, placement, and retention and completion of registered apprenticeship. We also launched with an apprenticeship utilization program that worked directly with employers to stimulate demand for new employees who were apprentices on active job sites. Those two programs together provide sort of a connective tissue around the registered apprenticeship system, which such high quality programs are run by the joint programs that are out there in the construction trades. And we wanted to leverage that. So Building Futures was designed specifically to be able to scale up or down depending on industry demand, to be a flexible program for young adults and beyond, and to prepare people well for success. And I know this, what it takes, because it's part of my own story. I became a union carpenter's apprentice at the age of 17. When I first walked on the job, it was, I knew how to show up every day on time. I knew how to work hard, knew how to apply myself. I knew how to be dependent and reliable. And I was a valuable employee from day one. And that, I think, is part of the key in terms of convincing employers, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later. To move them from a maybe to a yes, you have to demonstrate value. So I'll leave it there for now, just so I don't start getting too excited and talk too much. But there's a lot of interesting ways in which we can approach this to create real change for populations who need it.
Thank you, Andrew. And important to note that there is no such thing as being too excited about apprenticeship. But I'll kick it to Marina now, who is the incredible executive director of Trades Futures. Marina would love to hear about your work, how you got here, and some background on Trades Futures.
Sure. Thank you so much, Connor and Andrew. Great to be here, everyone. I'm Marina Javrankova. I'm the Executive Director of Trades Futures. We are a national nonprofit that was established by NABTU, which is North America's Building Trade Unions, and industry partners. We are about, it's 2025, so only about 3 years old. But the work that we do used to exist under the union, so used to exist under NABTU and has existed for a long time, since about 2008. And our main sort of bread and butter is our network of 270 apprenticeship readiness programs, of which Building Futures Rhode Island is one. And our programs are, and Andrew made a bit of this distinction when during his introduction, our apprenticeship readiness programs, which are multi-craft, which means they typically prepare individuals for a range of options in construction careers. So as opposed to an apprenticeship program, which is typically trade specific, you would go through an electrician apprenticeship or a plumbing and pipe fitting apprenticeship or carpentry like Andrew. We expose participants to all of the crafts that are available to them and what it would be like to have a career in the construction trades, and in particular in the union construction trades. One of the most exciting, I would say, and I would say organic areas of growth for us has been our programs in schools. We currently have approximately 80 programs in schools, and I think what's really interesting is just to sort of emphasize that word organic, is that our work really started focused on adult facing programs, right? Sort of short-term preparatory programs to expose individuals to the industry and facilitate their entry into apprenticeships and construction careers. But many of our partners wanted to do this work earlier on, right? Wanted to start with high school students. And so we've seen a lot of growth in the area, and I know we'll talk about that today as well. And then for me personally, just to sort of bridge the gap. So my background, is not in union construction work. I came at this from a workforce development perspective. I've worked across a wide variety of sectors in workforce development. And I think if you're a workforce development professional and your interest is in having the people you work with find good jobs, union construction is a really good way to do that. The construction industry, alone, I think, is not necessarily a good job. There are a lot of challenges across construction, and unions support their workers and their participants in ensuring that they are safe and paid, and also have a pension, right, that carries from job to job, which many of our participants do. So that's kind of the angle at which I come at this, which is that I want the folks that I work with to be secure and it be in family sustaining jobs, and this is a tried and true pathway to get there.
Awesome. Thank you, Marina. I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you both for giving some background. We're going to dive into some of our questions here. Just a reminder for folks attending and in the chat. At any point, if you have any questions for either of our panelists or for me, feel free to just drop it in the chat and we will address them as we go. So first question for Andrew. You built Building Futures from the ground up, and it was focused on bridging access between underserved communities and those family-sustaining construction careers that Marina was talking about for young people. What have you learned about what it really takes to move hesitant employers from maybe to yes? And what have you done to help convince employers that this is good for them, good for their community, good for the economy, but also makes sense from a workforce development perspective?
Yeah, well, I will say that the beginning is the hardest. Because over time you can present the data to folks and the data will make the case for you. But in the beginning, when you don't have the data set yet, that is when it is really a relational dynamic. And I will say that an employer or a union or anybody who sponsors a registered apprenticeship program, they're not doing it for charity. They are doing it because they need a predictable talent development pipeline. They need to be able to bring employees from the entry-level skills that are necessary for any employee to be proficient to full occupational proficiency within the span of the apprenticeship program, which means they need to be productive workers from day one. So the key really is that the first placement is an ambassador. That first placement is absolutely key because unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, negative makes a far stronger impression than positive. So first placements are absolutely critical in terms of winning over the employer or the sponsor or the union or whoever the hiring agent happens to be. It's incredibly important. So by doing that over time, though, we can demonstrate the value proposition. So I can show, we're up to about 500 placements in 16 different building trades unions at this point, and I can show that somebody who came from Building Futures pre-apprenticeship has the supportive services, received the comprehensive in-depth supports that are necessary, and the advanced training to pick the right trade. They're going to succeed and retain at a higher rate than somebody off the street. And the data doesn't lie. Right? So we can demonstrate this through Rapids data. We can demonstrate this in a variety of different ways. But when an employer first encounters a Building Futures graduates, they may say, oh, what's this Building Futures program? I'm not sure if I want to participate in that. By the time they're done having an experience with one of the young adults who came through our pre-apprenticeship, they're saying, what about that Building Futures? I'd like to have another. Right? And that's really the key, is the ambassadors, the value proposition, demonstrating value from day one, and recognizing that an employer is not there for charity. They're there for their business model, and we have to respect that. It's a partnership between an employer and an employee, which is why, though, registered apprenticeship may be union neutral, but it represents a compact between an employer and an employee around their learning. So you might want to think about it as a learning contract that comes with wage advancement guarantee.